The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Raine Musñgi. Catch up with us on Business Brief. U.S. President Donald Trump called on China to reach out to him in order to kick off negotiations aimed at resolving the escalating trade fight between the world's two largest economies. Reading what she said was a statement Trump dictated. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Tuesday that China must reach out first to start talks, while Beijing has indicated it's not clear about the U.S.'s demands.
The president has made his position on China quite clear, although I do have an additional statement that he just shared with me in the Oval Office. The ball is in China's court. China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them. There's no difference between China and any other country except they are much larger. And China wants what we have, what every country wants, what we have, the American consumer. Or to put it another way, they need our money. So the president, again, has made it quite clear that he's open to a deal with China, but China needs to make a deal with the United States of America.
The American leader criticized China in a social media post earlier Tuesday, saying the government just reneged on the big Boeing deal signed during his first administration. Well, the Trump tariffs taking a toll on Boeing as China orders its airlines to suspend jet deliveries from the U.S. company. That's in response to the Trump administration's move to impose 145% tariffs on Chinese goods. China's top three airlines, Air China, China Eastern Airlines, and China Southern Airlines, had planned to take in Boeing planes between 2025 and 2027. Beijing has also asked Chinese carriers to halt purchases of parts and equipment from American companies. China's President Xi Jinping is making the case for free trade as he tours Southeast Asia this week, presenting China as a source of stability and certainty. Coinciding with the start of President Xi's state visit to Malaysia late Tuesday, the remarks were made in an article signed by Xi, published by several major Malaysian media outlets. Xi is expected to discuss a free trade agreement between China and 10 member Association of Southeast Asian Nations, as Malaysia is chair of the association this year. ASEAN Secretary General Kao Kim Horan told Chinese state media that the agreement will eliminate many tariffs between China and the bloc's members.
During my meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, I mentioned and even asked why his thoughts are so different and unique. It is because President Xi focuses on cultural exchange, civilization, mutual learning, and shared prosperity. This kind of demeanor is not commonly seen in political figures of this era. This aligns with the vision of Malaysia Madani, which also emphasizes values, humanitarianism, and a global perspective. It presents a spirit dedicated to building civilization. President Xi's response was very interesting. He said, "Indeed, we need to develop the economy, but human development cannot be separated from history, culture, and civilization."
Well, shares mostly fell across markets in Asia during opening trading sessions Wednesday as further uncertainty loomed. This comes after U.S. President Trump ordered a probe into potential new tariffs on all U.S. critical minerals imports. In Tokyo, the Nikkei average futures slipped 0.5% in early trade. The Nikkei reports Japan's second biggest automaker by sales, Honda, is considering switching some car production from Mexico and Canada to the United States, aiming for 90% of cars sold in the country to be made locally in response to new U.S. tariffs. The Nikkei ending 1.5%, or rather 1.1% lower. Hong Kong's Hang Seng slid 1.6% earlier at the opening. The Shanghai Composite Index eased 0.6%. Data released by China's National Bureau of Statistics on Wednesday showed its economy grew 5.4% year-on-year in the first quarter, surpassing estimates. But UBS recently downgraded its GDP forecast for China to 3% next year on expectations tariff hikes imposed by the U.S. on Chinese goods will cause a more than 2 percentage point drag on China's GDP growth. In Seoul, the benchmark Kospi had ended 1.3% lower. Meanwhile, AI darling Nvidia took a hit from U.S. curbs on chip sales to China, highlighting the damage to come in a tit-for-tat global trade war. The chip giant is facing $5.5 billion in charges after the U.S. government limited exports of its H20 artificial intelligence chip to China, a key market for one of its most popular chips. All of the uncertainties left gold in an unstoppable position, with the bullion up 1.2%, now about 1.8%, to hit another record high of $3,266 per ounce.
The upside could be, anywhere from 5 to 10% or more. Again, the problem, though, is it just tariffs? I guess that's the question you got to ask yourself. Is it just tariffs, or is it an valuation? We have a lot of headwinds, right, with geopolitical stuff that is coming out. All investing should be tactical, right? So the way we like to use it, we like to use math, and we look at how far certain stocks have fallen. We use standard deviations, and when you look at the standard deviations on certain stocks, especially in the tech sector, you've had what we like to call a reset in some of these stocks. We were due for a correction. I mean, it's just natural. I know people don't like it. Everybody wants the market to go up, and I get it. But when you have a market that is going up every day, and you have certain stocks that are trading at ridiculous nosebleed multiples, you have to just assume. And that we're going to have a correction. And this is actually really healthy for markets. I know people.
So much damage in just 100 days. That's how former President Joe Biden describes 2.0. In his first major speech since leaving the White House in January, Biden slammed his successor for dipping his hands into the Social Security Administration. The Trump administration has cut agency staff and closed some of its SSA's offices as part of its efforts to streamline the government and cut bureaucracy. The agency pays out $1.4 trillion in benefits to 73 million elderly and disabled Americans annually.
Fewer than 100 days, this new administration has done so much damage and so much destruction. It's kind of breathtaking it could happen that soon. They've taken a hatchet to the Social Security Administration.
Wire services, including Reuters and Bloomberg News, will no longer hold a permanent slot in the small pool of reporters who cover President Donald Trump. The White House said on Tuesday, after shutting out the AP, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said her team would determine who gets to enjoy the very privileged and limited access in spaces such as Air Force One and the Oval Office. Up until then, those places had been decided by the White House Correspondents Association, an organization made up of journalists who cover the White House and the president. The pool typically consists of around 10 outlets that follow the president wherever he goes, whether it's a meeting in the Oval Office where he makes statements or answers questions, or trips at home or abroad. Under the new policy, wire services will lose their customary spot in the pool and will instead be part of a larger rotation with about 30 other newspaper and print outlets. You have to pause for a few reminders. The biggest business stories from around the country are up next. Keep it here on Business Brief, only on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Welcome back to Business Brief. Traffic is slowed along the South Luzon Expressway as Manila residents head to the provinces for the Holy Week break. Our correspondent Joash Malimban joins us live from Calamba in Laguna. Joash, what's the situation there now?
Raine, as of 3 p.m. today, light to moderate traffic can still be observed within the majority of the stretch of the South Luzon Expressway, with some exits, for instance, in Calamba, Laguna, gaining some vehicle buildup as the rush hour approaches. Since 6 a.m., at least 10 incidents of multiple vehicle collisions have already been recorded at different parts of the road. There are also traffic buildups due to bottleneck parts of SLEX, for instance, in the areas of Cabuyao and Calamba, where from 5 lanes they get reduced to 3 or 2.5. Bottlenecks also cause accidents when drivers tend to try to get ahead of each other. Meanwhile, San Miguel Corporation has rolled out its full traffic management plan ahead of the Holy Week exodus. Thousands of vehicles are expected to pass through SLEX as Metro Manila residents head to the provinces for the long break. Authorities say traffic will likely build up at key interchanges that connect SLEX to national roads and other expressways. To ease congestion, the company has deployed more tollway personnel, patrollers, emergency responders, and traffic marshals across the expressway. Ongoing roadworks that may interrupt traffic have also been suspended since noon last Friday and will remain halted until 10 p.m. on April 21. Motorists are being advised to plan their trips wisely and to make sure their auto-sweep RFID accounts are topped up to avoid long queues at toll plazas. Rain authorities remind motorists to observe speed limits 100 kilometers per hour for Class 1 vehicles and 80 for Classes 2 and 3. And of course, check your vehicles before hitting the road, especially your tires and engines, to prevent breakdowns and road crashes. Rain.
Great advice and great advisory right there. Thank you so much for that report, Joash Malimban in Calamba. Well, economists are sounding the alarm over a possible slowdown in OFW cash remittances. Our correspondent Sujin Kim joins us on the line for details. Sujin, go ahead.
Yes, Raine, former BSP Deputy Governor Diwa Ginigundo, this is not a slump, but a definite slowdown, amplified by the stronger peso, tighter global conditions, and looming policy shifts from the U.S. The drop, while historically consistent with post-holiday normalization, could be viewed with caution amid escalating global risks. He warned that a global trade war spurred by Trump's protectionist policies could disrupt OFW deployment and remittance flows. February's remittance level was down 6.8% month-on-month, following a sharp 13.7% slide in January. Year-on-year growth was still positive at plus 2.7% according to BSP data. The growth, however, was slower than the 3% recorded a year ago and now sits below the government's modest 3% target. RCBC chief economist Michael Ricafort highlighted that the strong U.S. dollar, up 11% versus the peso since 2022, meant less dollars needed to meet the same peso expenses, dampening growth figures despite continued inflows. Both economists warned that tighter immigration enforcement under the Trump administration, including raids on undocumented migrants in the U.S., could lead to a reduction in remittances from America, which accounts for over 40% of total inflows. Still, economists noted that the seasonal uptick in remittances could return in the coming months, driven by Holy Week, tuition payments, and mid-year family expenses. But risks from Trump's trade war, drumbeat, and global slowdown may keep gains in check, with the country relying on over billion US dollars in annual OFW remittances. Even a modest dip could ripple across consumer spending, investments, and the broader economic outlook. And those are our latest updates for now. Back to you, Raine.
Thank you so much for that report, Sujin Kim. The Asian Development Bank has approved the release of $1.45 billion for the Malolos-Clark Railway project. The amount is the final tranche of a $2.75 billion loan for the 53.1-kilometer railway segment that will connect Clark International Airport to Bulacan. Delays in the right-of-way acquisition pushed the target completion from 2026 to 2028. Japan's JICA is co-financing the project, supplying trains and systems. ADB is also financing the southern link of the 163-kilometer north-south commuter railway system, one of the bank's largest infrastructure investments in the Asia-Pacific region. The Bureau of Internal Revenue stands firm on its over 3 trillion peso collection target despite economic headwinds. Sujin Kim returns with this report.
As the deadline for filing annual income tax returns concludes, BIR Commissioner Romeo Lumagi Jr. remains confident that the agency can achieve its record-breaking 3.23 trillion peso collection target for the year. He states that there are no plans to revise the goal downwards despite prevailing economic headwinds.
Sa ngayon, hindi namin inaasahan or hindi namin tinitingnan kung magkakaroon ng adjustment on the goal or collection target. As far as we're concerned, we're still working on achieving the 3.23 trillion collection target at dyan kami nakafocus.
For this month alone, he expects 480 billion pesos in revenue. Musñgi attributes this confidence to the agency's intensified crackdown on fraudulent activities, particularly the use of fake receipts. This initiative has already led to the filing of cases against major entities, with cosmetics company Everbilena as of late.
Yung paghahabol natin sa mga gumagawa ng mga peking resibo. Nakafocus tayo dyan and nakita naman natin na maraming mga taxpayers ang tumigil dito kaya naman tumaas ang collection natin sa VAT. At yan din ang tinututukan pa natin.
The BIR is also heightening their campaign against illicit trade such as vape products sold online and in physical stores. The agency is also enhancing its digital infrastructure to streamline tax compliance. All regional and district offices are now equipped for online transactions, with the full transition to digital filing anticipated by next year.
Patuloy pa rin ang ginagawa nating improvement sa ating digital transformation dahil ang pakay niyan ay mas padaliin ang pag-comply sa pagbabayad ng buwis.
Although MSMEs still have the option to file manually as part of the ease of paying taxes law, taxpayers are reminded that failure to file by the deadline may result in penalties. The BIR continues to encourage timely compliance to support national development and public service initiatives. Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
The rise of inflation is slowing, but sari-sari store data tell a different story. Packworks, which tracks 300,000 stores nationwide, reported a surprising drop in sales of high-margin sin products like cigarettes and alcohol, and a rise in iced tea and energy drinks. In an exclusive interview on Follow the Money, Packworks CMO Iba Bernardo reveals consumer behavior is shifting, possibly signaling deeper economic strain despite slowing inflation.
The prices of goods are going up across the board and in the sari-sari stores. But a multiplier of that is the sin tax, which adds an additional layer that, again, amplifies the impact of the costs. There are a lot of elements when it comes to the pricing of sari-sari stores now. We release these kinds of like little articles and on the data we learn from sari-sari stores. We've got an awesome team just kind of looking for tidbits like the impact of the sin taxes, inflation, Valentine's Day, etc. I guess we'll break the news here. It's energy drinks, it is iced tea, sugar drinks, and
Well, blending global techniques with Filipino flavors. That's a strategy that Chef Noel Catis applied to his viral creation, the Kanafe, better known online as Dubai chocolate. On BNC's It's a Beautiful Day, the culinary genius shared how childhood memories and cultural identity guided his creativity. His successful use of heritage drives his innovation, and his products appeal to diverse markets. Case in point is his viral chocolate kanafe, which blends Middle Eastern tradition with Filipino nostalgia.
I just look at the childhood memory, and I've delivered this on my TED Talk. Actually, my speech was about how you actually make people fall in love with your food, with your cooking, and it really boils down to nostalgia. Like, I always remember in my childhood what made me happy, and since we're all like in diaspora, we're all over the world, what makes you fall in love again with your childhood? And that will be the flavors you have had when you were a kid.
Yeah.
So that's the secret.
It's a chocolate for you, for
Yes,
sure.
it is.
Wow.
And that's the vehicle for people to, because chocolate, everybody loves chocolate.
Yeah.
I always look at the more of the natural format of our ingredients, like, you know, where we have a lot of nuts like pili nuts, cashew,
Yeah.
ube. They're all like earthy, nutty tones. So the way I look at it, it's more of like a tropical kind of flavor. So when they ask me about it, I just tell them, like, imagine, you know, you're in a tropical area and these are the flavors you enjoy: coconut, you know, pineapple. And that's how I try to fuse together between the flavors of the Arabic world, for example. But I don't want to stop there. I want to dominate, like, as much of many countries. Yeah, if I can.
Over the world.
So, but
You're
I
taking
really
over the
want to
world
make
slowly,
sure.
but surely,
I want
Chef.
to make sure we have our Filipino pride stamped on the creation.
President Bongbong Marcos signed into law a measure extending Meralco's franchise for another 25 years. This means the company will have the authority to distribute power to Metro Manila, Bulacan, Cavite, Rizal, and select areas in Batangas, Laguna, Quezon, and Pampanga until 2053. Ultra Bilyonaryo Manny Pangilinan thanked President Marcos and both houses of Congress for their support. MVP added they will implement long-term energy infrastructure projects that will further improve the delivery of electricity to homes, businesses, and industries that fuel the country's development. The Bank of the Philippine Islands of Ultra Bilyonaryo Zubel family extends ABS-CBN's 5 billion peso loan deadline to September 1st this year. Based on documents obtained by Bilyonaryo.com, ABS-CBN said the extension was made on the same terms as the original agreement. ABS-CBN is still in talks with BPI to refinance its remaining debt. The extension was granted just days after the Lopez's sold 3 hectares out of ABS-CBN's Mother Ignacia compound in Quezon City to the Zubel's Ayala Land Incorporated for 6.2 billion pesos. ABS-CBN has been negotiating for a waiver on payments with its creditors since its 3-year standstill agreement with banks lapsed in 2023. Metro Retail Stores Group reported a 618 million peso net income for 2024, marking a 32.6% decline from the previous year's 917 million. Net sales saw a marginal increase of about 0.4%, reaching 38 billion pesos, up from 38.1 billion in 2022. The company attributed the income drop to macroeconomic challenges and increased expenses. MRSGI expanded its footprint by opening new stores, including a neighborhood mini-mart in General Trias, Cavite, and 2 Metro supermarkets in Lapu-Lapu City, Cebu, and Alang-Alang, Leyte. The company also inaugurated a new distribution center in Santa Rosa, Laguna, to bolster its logistics capabilities. Meanwhile, SM offices reported a 95% occupancy rate across its 22 mall-based office locations as of January 2025. The division of SM Prime Holdings says this high occupancy is attributed to the growing demand for mixed-use developments that offer employees access to retail and recreational amenities. The company is expanding its presence in provincial areas, adding over 85,000 square meters of leasable space in cities like Cebu and Bacolod to accommodate the increasing demand from traditional and BPO companies. For 2025, SM Offices has allocated about 6 billion pesos for the development of new office towers, including the 6th e-com center in the Mall of Asia complex, designed to cater to technology-driven industries. On to the markets now. Philippine shares snap a 6-day winning streak to fall alongside most Asian peers. The main index declined 0.8% to 61.34 on Wednesday, the last trading day of the Holy Week for predominantly Catholic Philippines. Value turnover reached 4.2 billion pesos. Still, advancers edged out decliners 110 to 79. The drops were led by the services counter, led by port operator ICTSI, closing lower by about 3.9% for the week. Or rather, for the week, market gained about 0.8% from last week's close. Meanwhile, the foreign exchange market, the peso is currently trading at 56 pesos and 65 centavos to the US dollar, just slightly stronger than Tuesday's close of 56.77. That's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us again on Monday as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. We'll leave you with shots from El Salvador, where Easter kicked off with a traditional ceremony where men dressed as devils whip each other during an event meant to highlight the universal struggle of good versus evil. And blessed Holy Week to all.